So all the reasons successful entrepreneurs are celebrated today, being risk takers or aggressive, they're the same reasons why a lot of introverts don't think they can become entrepreneurs themselves, which is a real shame because there's a lot of brilliant people out there and brilliant ideas never seeing light of day because they don't take the time to give it a shot because they think they have to be something that they're not, right? And I guess this message is a bit of a love letter to anyone out there who's an introvert who thinks they need to be extroverted to start a business because you don't. And I thought it'd be cool to just package this up into a personal video so that you can watch it in the comfort of your own home or in the safety of your headphones when you're on a train or a bus. And if you're someone who's extroverted that's watching this anyway, I'm sure you've got a friend or a family member, whether it's a brother or a sister or an uncle or aunt, that you think could probably benefit from this, because I'm trying to speak to them right now and they may be, deciding whether they start something on the side or not, but not doing it because they think they're the wrong person. And I'm just trying to let them know that that's complete BS. They should really give it a shot. Hi, my name's Tashi Dorji. I go by The Fail Founder because back in the day, my co-founder and I started a business where we turned restaurants that were closed during the day into a network of co-working spaces. We hit a $10 million valuation. We scaled and failed. Didn't mean for that to rhyme. And learned a lot on that journey. So I'm just trying to impart some of that wisdom to anyone out there trying. And funnily enough, based off the topic of this video, the co-founder dynamic at our company was I was the extroverted one, even though I feel like I'm becoming introverted as I get older. And my business partner was the introvert, right? And we worked together really well. We played to each other's strengths. And that's important because you could be either or. And it's a really important message for the introverts out there who don't want to start because they think they don't have what it takes. That's total hogwash. In our case, I would be the one out there, a bit of a face for the company, I suppose. Putting the energy out there to network, to meet people, to get media attention, all of that kind of stuff. And my co-founder was the very measured one. He'd listen and he'd be very strategic. So didn't have to go out and deal with everyone. And we really worked together as a duo where we tackled a lot of situations. Funnily enough, there'd be so many situations where I'd come with like 100 ideas and he'd go, 99 of those suck, but that one's good, so let's focus on that. So that dynamic was actually really good and refreshing. And without him, I would have completely been a dog chasing cars. So if you're someone who actually doesn't like all of the sensationalized BS of starting a company, which is why you don't do it, my first point probably around that is you don't have to do it. You could probably find someone to do it for you. Like co-founders, I think, are great because it's also someone that you can hold accountability with for one another to make sure things get done, whether you're in it full time or you're both doing it part time on the side. So that's always something to think about. What I would say though is that if you're considering finding someone as an introvert who's very sales orientated and out there, just be a bit careful. There's a lot of charming snake oil salesmen out there, and if you rush into it, you could get swindled. You could end up giving away half your company or 20-30% of it for their time, and they may end up taking you for a ride. And on that point, if you ever do that, where you find a co-founder, always vest that equity, please. Don't give it up front. Vest it over a 2-3 year period at least. So you've kind of got that honeymoon period of that first year to figure it out together to see if you're a good match or not. But just be careful because, and what I probably would say to try and get around it, if you've got a friend who's super extroverted or a family member, try and get them to meet one another. I mean, you should, because if you're about to start a business together, you'd like them to meet some of your close network because there's a saying, you can't bullshit a bullshitter, right? So they'll be able to help vet that individual for you. And if you actually don't want to find a co-founder and find a face and you want to go it alone, you absolutely can, right? You don't need to find someone to be the face if you think you're an extrovert, which is probably a good time to jump into the definition of an introvert versus an extrovert. It's nothing to do with, can you pitch or can you be comfortable in these situations all the time or can you sell something? It's really where you get energy from. There's been a lot of studies to show how people recharge, and the simplest way to describe it is extroverts get energy from audiences and being around people, which is probably why they're really good at the selling stuff and networking. Introverts, they recharge on their own. right? They like to be alone at home or doing their own thing. That's where they get their energy from. So it actually doesn't matter where you get your energy from as long as you re-energize and recharge that battery for when it's go time, right? Whether you need to have an important conversation or you need to pitch something or sell something. And on the introverted topic, I actually think the best salespeople are introverted, very personally, not just from my startup days. And I know that's a blow to my own skill set because a lot of people consider me extroverted. But even in my corporate career now, the very big deals that we close are always closed through trust and knowledge and detail. Not charisma, not buzzwords, not people skills to a degree, which are important, but it's the person who knows their stuff and has an answer for every question. And it doesn't matter if those answers come out a little shaky or they don't come out like, silk and very coercive or anything like that. It really comes down to what the answer is and what the solution is, and can you communicate that, and are you confident about that? Because it's all about conveying confidence. And I genuinely believe as I get older, confidence doesn't come from delivery all the time, it comes from just knowing your stuff. Right? So if you know your stuff, I actually would categorize you as a better salesperson than someone who doesn't but is very slick. You can be both, which is fine, but that's just my 2 cents on that. To support the thinking that introverts are great listeners and therefore great leaders, there was a Harvard Business article and research piece commissioned by Professor Adam Grant, Wharton professor. And he actually did a study where he had a huge plot of people, of team leaders and followers, and found that the groups that were led by the introvert versus an extrovert with, aspiring people within the team that had lots of ideas actually performed a lot better. And this is because the extroverts were threatened by the teammates with all the ideas coming to them as the team lead and didn't necessarily convey them properly, whereas the introverts listened, right, and made the people feel heard and implemented those ideas. So overall, as a team, they actually did better, which is very interesting. And I just throw that in there because also if you're doubting your leadership ability, the best leaders, they listen and they make people feel heard. So that's a skill that you've got inherently in you, whether it's because you're not afraid of silence, which a lot of extroverts are, which means you're a good listener by default because you're giving people oxygen to kind of tell their idea. That's a great trait. And I can wholeheartedly say if I was asked to invest in a company today, in a startup, I would look at the person, right? And right now in my stage of life, I would lean towards, my preference would be to invest in a very detail-orientated and measured introverted individual. Nothing but respect for the extroverts and the passionate visionaries and everything like that. But just in my experience in my own startup journey, I've always gravitated towards those people. Even in my life right now, I'm surrounded by people I admire and respect who aren't blabbermouths like myself necessarily, which actually makes me think of something a mentor told me who didn't realize he was my mentor when I was younger. Sometimes the best mentors are the ones that don't realize they're mentoring you. He said to me when I was quite young, "Tashi, you talk a lot, but you don't say much," which really, it really hit hard. It really sucked. But it taught me a lot to kind of just make sure that I was much more, I guess, specific when I spoke and didn't just kind of waffle on forever. But coming back to what I was saying, which actually ironically is me waffling, so maybe lesson not learned there, is I would invest in an introverted individual. And again, there's nothing that's saying that you can't have traits of both, and a lot of people do, but I like that. I like someone who just knows their stuff, doesn't really care about running and telling the world about it all the time, and just gets it done. I mean, to me, that's cool. That's cool, right? And to the point where now that I'm pushing 40, when I was young and I used to network, I would almost do, let's get as many business cards as possible and meet everyone. My version of networking now, if I have to, is I literally look into the corners for the quietest people in the room and go speak to them. And it's never failed me. I find that I end up talking to some amazing individuals who are way more important or interesting than myself. They just don't want to participate in, the craziness that's going on inside the middle. So, and if you still don't believe me, here are some examples of some incredible leaders who you probably wouldn't realize were introverted individuals. Like the first one's Barack Obama, right? And there was this incredible quote saying from this journalist, I think his name was David Brooks, where he said, "Being led by Barack Obama is like being trumpeted into battle by Miles Davis. You just want to sit and discern. Because when you actually watch him, he's always thinking. He's very measured. He thinks before he talks, right? He listens. And that's a crazy trait. That's a crazy good trait for an introverted individual. Michael Jordan is another one that probably no one would guess was an introvert. And he does a lot of what I like to call independent reflection. So when you actually look at the way that he practiced on his own, he would watch game tapes over and over and over and practice on his own over and over again till he achieved perfection. And then that's also how he got energy on his own. So when it was game day, he would perform, right? He didn't necessarily get it from being around all these other people. Marissa Mayer, the former CEO of Yahoo, is another classic example of an introvert painted as an extrovert by modern media. She's openly come out multiple times in interviews, even with Vogue, saying, I'm an introverted individual, I'm super shy, hate jumping on stage, but got to do it for the gig, right? And her tactic was to put herself in uncomfortable situations before having to go on stage. So she's already in a state of, to a degree, okay, I just got to push through this. And that's actually called anti-fragility. And you've probably seen it being used in a variety of situations like ice baths, people kind of putting themselves in those situations so it helps their health and gets their mindset in the right thing. Comedians do it all the time to master their craft. They don't practice at home necessarily by themselves all the time, even though some of them hate it, funnily enough, and are probably introverted individuals, force themselves to go up on stage, whether it's small shows all the time, over and over, over and over. You okay there, Lenny? This is just the log. Don't worry about it, girl. It's all right. Lay down. You can lay. Okay, I think she's freaked out about that a little bit. And the last one is, as a really great example, my wife. She's completely introverted. She says she is. But when she needs to switch it on, she can. And in a really weird way, this marriage, and not to actually, this is a horrible example, but I almost feel like we have this introverted, extroverted dynamic even happening within the household, which serves us really well. Like, I am happy to share even this YouTube channel, which I've promised to give it a good crack to share insights out with the world. Half of these ideas for videos are hers. She's like, hey, I think you'd have a really good message around this because with your own startup story, you went through it and you do this and you do that. Why don't you talk about that? Like the last few videos, it's all been her behind the scenes, and she doesn't want to come out on camera and talk to you guys or girls, even though I'll probably try and convince her one day because she's way smarter than me. But yeah, she's an introvert, and every time I try and tell her, hey, I'm an introvert too, or I'm becoming one, she's like, you're not. Don't even pretend, So I'll take her word for it, absolutely. So I hope this video was helpful, because if you're out there and you think you don't have what it takes to start a company, because as I said at the beginning, unfortunately, successful entrepreneurs are painted as extroverts, painted as people who like to go out there and sell the dream and do it all. It doesn't mean you can't do it. I actually commend you for your ability to get stuff done and not need to be in the limelight, not need to shout it from the top of the rooftops all the time, which gets exhausting, and it's exhausting to watch, right? So I think you should give it a shot. I think if you want to do it, you got this. There's no harm that comes from trying. It'll just help develop you as an individual, right? Everyone talks about startup valuations. We should be talking about personal valuations, right? After 4 or 5 years, even if a company doesn't go anywhere, where have you gone? You've probably skyrocketed in terms of growth, right? And you'll probably crush the next one you do, or you'll take those learnings and apply them somewhere else, like I have, where I now don't do startups anymore. I mentor some, but I work in a corporate career and behave entrepreneurial there, right? Work in a large company, started as one for me within my team, and I've grown it to 40. So it's kind of like, that's a startup in itself, even though it's not. So just want to say, you got this. I believe in you. And if you've got any questions, just hit me up in the comments. Super accessible right here. I'll talk to you. But I just want you to start. All right, have a good one.